Hey everyone, welcome back to Gotcha Interact. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Lan Yan, kind of like a post-release. You can think of it that way. It's not a build guide or anything like that, but we kind of just wanted to talk about her as a character now that she's been out, and a lot of us have gotten her, a lot of us either through the free 4-star selector, and if not, just through wishing. Maybe you got that C2 that everyone's been talking about, because I don't know about you, Vixen, that C2 is crazy. Now that we kind of have a character in a 4-star too, not another 5-star, but now that we have a character in a 4-star that has a very powerful shield, if not stronger, and it actually is stronger with that C2, considering if you're doing those normal attacks with your on-fielder, than someone like Zhongli. That is just crazy to me. So like, what are your initial thoughts on something like that? What does this mean for Zhongli maybe?
I think it's a 50-50, right? Because you have to think about other characters that still like Zhongli, right? So characters like Neuvillette that are still charge attack based. Hu Tao is other characters like that like charge attacks. So those teams won't really change. It really changes for those few characters. Arlecchino is obviously the major one, considering Arlecchino loves to do normal attacks, and she's the only one that can heal herself in a party. So having an extremely strong shielder is always a very good option, but to make that shield even stronger than Zhongli's, that's the whole reason why having a shielder with Arlecchino is it feels comfortable, and it's more, you're just basically protecting her more because you don't have to worry about, she's the only healer that you have to really worry about, so it makes things difficult. Having a shielder in there that is animal also, and combining that with viridescent, you know, you're kind of double dipping, being a good shielder as well as a buffer. That's really just a good idea. Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind is, does this mean that Kazuha is kicked out of those teams? Does that mean that also, I mean, what about Zhongli's buff as well? I believe when you're protected by his shield,
Right.
you also have a buff. So, or I guess more of it's a debuff to enemies, but either way, you're still getting more damage out. What does that really look like? You know what I mean? I think the bigger question is Xilonen kind of, everybody said, well, no, Kazuha didn't get pushed off his pedestal, or maybe he got pushed off the pedestal, but he's not in the ground, which is totally fair, and I agree. But what does Lan Yan kind of mean now for Kazuha?
I think the thing is with Kazuha, you still are getting more buffing, not just because you're getting viridescent, but you're also getting his own kit, which is always going to be on top of any other viridescent user, because all that these other animo characters usually have is just viridescent. Kazuha also throws in his own buffing. Sucrose does a similar thing. Lynette has an attack buff, you know, so they kind of all have their own thing, but Kazuha still is always the top option strictly for buffing whoever you're buffing. Like, you're going to get more out of Kazuha for Arlecchino's damage, personal damage, than you will with Lan Yan, but Lan Yan's going to be a more comfortable option just because, yeah, you have that shield, but you're able to retain that viridescent buff, which I think that's really great. Because what would you think maybe a really good team for Arlecchino that involves Lan Yan?
Well, obviously, some of the better teams, it really does depend. One that I've always had a lot of fun with Arlecchino is doing her, Kazuha, Xilonen, and Bennett. You have the double pyro, you're getting the attack resonance. Now at the same time, you're getting Kazuha, which is a lot of elemental damage bonus, and the viridescent shred. Same thing and similar vibe, just kind of reversed, that you get with Xilonen is the same thing, just different kits and obviously artifact sets that do the same thing, but it's the same character, but just a little different. Switching out Kazuha there for Lan Yan allows you once again to have a shielder and actually have someone there to protect you. At the same time, you could pair that with any of her vape teams or vaporized teams, so putting Arlecchino with a character like Xingqiu or Yelan, probably Xingqiu in my personal opinion, just for more energy help, having Lan Yan there, and then Bennett having some just pure 4-star team with Arlecchino to kind of help her out. And then you know, you could even you could try to do some other teams, but those are the major ones that kind of pop up in my head.
I don't know about you, but my wallet needs a break after 5.3's crazy banners. Looking to the future now, I need to be saving for these other characters, and I have just the tool you need to help with just that. If you haven't noticed already, we are proud supporters of Loot Bar, an online top-up platform that allows you to purchase Genesis crystals at a cheaper price than inside the game. The reason Loot Bar is 100% safe and efficient is because they only require your UID and server region. They don't ask for any passwords or emails or anything like that. And besides, if you do encounter an issue, they do have a 24/7 live chat support to help you with any problems you may have. Also, if you play other gacha games or just other games in general, you might want to check and see if Loot Bar also supports those. The other great thing about Loot Bar is that they do guarantee your delivery within 30 minutes, but every single time I personally use Loot Bar, I get this in like 30 seconds. Also, if you need some other credibility, there have been other creators that have promoted Loot Bar in the past, and some of them continually do so, including ourselves. If you still aren't convinced, check out the thousands of customer reviews that people have left praising Loot Bar endlessly. So what are you waiting for? Check out that link in the description or even in the pinned comment to start saving today. I think right now isn't the best Arlecchino team a melt team with Xilonen and Xilonen for sure, and then probably just Bennett at that point.
It definitely could be. It just really heavily depends on how you built your Arlecchino. Because of the help that Xilonen has given on top of what Viridescent can do, on top of what the Shred can do from other characters, there's so much that can kind of be giving. It really just depends. It's funny you say that for that team because you want Lan Yan there, you want Xilonen there, you want Bennett there. So there's your 3 characters. So that's almost a team though you kind of want to throw more characters in the team just because of all the solid buffing you can get. So it's one of those teams that wants like 5 or 6 characters.
Yeah, I guess we're just at that point in the game now though where we have so many characters now, and when you look at just supports, just buffers, there's just now so many options we're used to. There was only ever obvious option, just throw Kazuha in the team, like, because there's really not another thing. Now we have Xilonen, there's Zhongli. There's just so many options now. Farina, Yelan, there's all of these different top tier supports that can be used in different ways. So it's kind of just like a process of elimination. Well, you know, who do we cut and who is the best, for your other 3 slots. So I think there's just different variations, but I really like the idea though for that Arlecchino team being free to play friendly, because Arlecchino in that one team you mentioned is the only 5-star when you have Bennett, Xingqiu, and Lan Yan. That seems like a really good vaporized team too. Anyways, you've got the application, you've got the Bennett buff, also the pyro resonance, but also your viridescent shredder, and she's kind of a sustain at the same time, which, like you pointed out, Arlecchino likes because she can't be healed from other sources besides herself. So that just seems like a very comfortable team. I'm just still kind of flabbergasted. Like, this 4-star Lan Yan is just so powerful because new Animo 4-star support. Oh, okay, it's another viridescent option. But the fact that she's also an Animo shielder, I think that's what makes her just so valuable, because she's the first of her kind of archetype. We didn't have an Animo shielder, period. There is no 5-star comparison, and so because of that, I think that's what makes Lan Yan pretty valuable, just because she's the only one you can use. I think it's kind of like when Yao Yao released, she was really valuable when she did, because I don't think we had Baizhu yet. So Yao Yao was very sought after, and obviously in a similar scenario, she was the free 4-star in the Liyue selector. So she was very good. That was during the Dendro meta. Dendro teams were everything, use Nahida, use Yao Yao. And then later we got Baizhu, and that's like, okay, here's the luxury option, the upgrade to Yao Yao. So what are your thoughts maybe on seeing a 5-star Animo shielder in the future? Do you think that would happen?
I mean, anything could happen, right? With how Genshin kind of does things,
Yeah.
It just depends on what they really want
What
to
about
throw at
Varka?
us. But I mean, I would really want a crowd character if Varka comes out.
Yeah,
but
no,
I think
that's fair.
I think that overall, the interesting thing to keep in mind with your Lan Yan specifically is if you have Caesar Lan Yan, it's not that she's bad at that point or whatever, or that it's useless. Still a very good character, still a pretty strong shield. But that C2 we talked about earlier, just want to keep everybody in mind that C2 is what allows her, being paired with normal attacking characters, that's actually what makes her extremely strong. So basically you get to there is basically a certain amount of that shield. Basically it's like holding capacity. If it's like at 100% after taking multiple hits, it obviously gets depleted until it breaks, right? Well, when you do normal attacks, it refreshes more of that shield and brings that percentage higher so that it takes longer to break. So that's the whole point of that specifically. Also keep in mind when that shield also gets swirled, or if you swirl when you're using your skill. Let's say it's a hydro enemy. Let's say you're fighting the hydro tulpa, right? And we're talking about using her, like I talked about earlier, with Lan Yan and Kazuha, or Lan Yan, Xilonen, and Bennett with Arlecchino, right? So full pyro team going in. You could do this with Linny. That's also another good character that could be paired with this. Let's just say you're fighting pyro with this enemy, right? And you're going up against this hydro enemy. When you use your skill, it is going to be immediately swirling that hydro and turn the shield actually to have a higher resistance. Basically, it's going to be stronger against getting hit by hydro. That just makes the shield even stronger, because if you're fighting the hydro tulpa, it's only going to hit you with hydro. So that means the shield's going to last even longer. And never mind adding the C2 on top of that. I think that right there, that little thing that people don't kind of recognize, that elemental kind of conversion of the shield and then making it stronger against getting hit by that element, I think makes it also extremely strong once you really start to think about it. And once again, do that with any element as well that it can swirl. And if you have the opposite reaction, that's really, really going to help you stay alive even longer. And that sustain of that shield be even stronger as well.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a very good thing. But like you said at the beginning of the video, this doesn't mean that these other characters can't be used. You know, the caveat with C2 Lan Yan is that it only does work with those normal attack characters. That's why we've been talking about Arlecchino so much, and just other characters that are going to do normal attacks are obviously going to be able to take a lot of use out of that C2 Lan Yan. But when you have a character that doesn't use normal attacks, like those Neuvillette teams, you know, you can still use a C0 Lan Yan too, and that works fine. I've actually seen testing that people have done with a Neuvillette and Lan Yan, and it actually, there is a lot of synergy. And the reason there's still a lot of synergy is because a C0 Neuvillette especially just wants a shield in general. So any shielder is better than no shielder in that scenario. So it does work, and the free-to-play friendly Neuvillette team, based on testing I saw other creators doing, actually looks really good. Because when you have a character that doesn't, you know, based on normal attacks, doesn't matter if you have C2 Lan Yan or not, it's as if she's C1 or C0 anyways, because that's not going to work, obviously. A character like Hu Tao, that's kind of interesting. I mean, I would say you can use a C2 Lan Yan, just because when you go to do a charge attack with Hu Tao, she has to do one normal at the beginning, and you are constantly doing that. So I imagine you still are, you know, refreshing the shield. So that's a good shielding option for Hu Tao, because Hu Tao really likes to have his shielder. If not, though, you can still use the other ones, like Zhongli's just the universal, has been the universal go-to. And still kind of is for any team that needs a shielder. This is just great, though, for free-to-play, because if you don't have Zhongli, well, you have Lan Yan. And even if the character's not a normal attacking character, it's still a really good shield. Like, Lan Yan's shield, even without the C2, is just a really nice shield. You're going that triple attack percent, use a high attack weapon. She's got a pretty strong shield, and it's kind of reminding me of Layla. Layla actually has a pretty good shield too. It's just that it doesn't have any replenishing properties, like it doesn't replenish itself like the C2 Lan Yan does. So it's reminding me of this character a little bit now. So now we have two really good 4-star shielders, Layla, but now Lan Yan, and obviously being number 1 just because she can replenish that shield. So there's a lot to think about, you know. Obviously teams that do animo damage, like let's say a Wanderer team or a, well, I would say a Chotska team, but she doesn't deal animo damage. But yes, you could use Lan Yan strictly for the shield, but obviously a character like that isn't going to be helping Wanderer too much, because Viridescent doesn't really mean anything for him. Now, Chotska, it could mean something, but the problem you're going to hit with Chotska is you simply want 3 different elements so she can convert all of her bullets. If you use Lan Yan, sure, you can get that Viridescent shred for the elements that she will convert to, but you're also losing an entire bullet in the process. It's kind of like using Kazuha in that team, too. You just don't do that. You just don't see it. Sometimes you don't even use Xilonen in Chotska teams. You can, but you're taking another element. So it's just a give and take. But overall, I think with Lan Yan, at the end of the day, very high value character, because a lot of different teams can use a shielder. And even if they can't use a shielder, a lot of teams can use that Viridescent support, and the shield's just kind of a cherry on top.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at anyone and everyone that really, once again, like you said, even if they don't use normal attacks, like I talked about Linny, doesn't matter, that shield is still going to be pretty good. So it still allows a lot of free-to-play players, or just people in general, if you grabbed her, you got her, still use her. Still a pretty good character, especially helpful with the Imaginarium Theater.
Oh yeah,
I think Animo is up on this next one as well, so that also will help out for future people that have built her. So get her ready, jump into the Imaginarium Theater. It's another character you guys can put on your belt. Characters like Sino, even though like aggravate teams or whatever, usually you try to throw in like Kazuha or something in there, and that actually might be helpful if you're having maybe issues of, you know, I know that I think that he gets like an interruption resistance.
That's actually a good point, though, because Sino can be difficult. He does get thrown around. Kind of feels like Wanderer, but not airborne. He can be difficult to play, I should say, and that could just be a skill issue on my part. But maybe some of you can resonate with Sino. Just he feels very squishy because he's not an HP scaling DPS. He doesn't have a too high of a defense stat naturally. Maybe it's like, you know how like Zhao has a really high defense stat. Just, you know, just like, why do you have a high defense? You know, Sino doesn't really have that. He gets 2 tapped almost all the time, and if not 1 tapped by just bigger enemies, like if you're fighting a consecrated beast. Sino just feels squishy. He feels very vulnerable unless you're just good at the game, unlike me, and you know how to dash and stuff like that. So that could just be a personal issue, but it could be nice to have that Lan Yan there, not just for that viridescent, but for that reason of having the shield. And if you do have the C2, it actually does work well with Sino because you are doing those normal attacks throughout his whole duration.
Yeah, I think that a character like him, a character like Ayato as well, there are so many characters of the core four, Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, Electro, that are going to be increased by just damage help. That's a Viridescent user and a shield, they're all in one. It just makes things a lot more fun. Never mind 4 stars, I could also take advantage of it. But I think overall, a good character, a fun character. Hopefully we'll get to see some interesting teams in the future. Never mind future characters that could possibly work with her as well. Well, that's everything we've got talking about Lan Yan in this specific video. If you guys have any other thoughts looking at her as a character, this is more or less just us kind of talking about the character, thinking of what we've seen. And there's been a lot of talks about her as a character in general, so we kind of wanted to throw our 2 cents in. If you guys have any other ideas or thoughts, go ahead and let us know down in the comments. Thank you guys for watching this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.